Welcome to the WakeUp Protocol. We are your co-hosts. I'm Colin.
And I am Nadja.
And together, we're having life-changing conversations with real people about spiritual awakening and the transformations that follow.
Together, we're mapping the messy path of awakening so that you can go further, faster, and feel a little less alone along the way.
For this episode of the WakeUp Protocol, we have as our guest Shalynn Flavell, a hypnotherapist and integrative coach in Seattle, Washington, as well as the founder of Temple Hypnosis. As a hypnotherapist, Shalynn's approach connects her clients to their own innate wisdom, and her intuitive presence enables her to see deeper patterns below the surface. Her approach to hypnotherapy immediately captured our attention. She lives in the mysterious unfoldment of every moment, asking where are the gaps and what are they not saying? From there, she is able to descend into the depths with her clients, discovering magical potentials that await in the subterranean undercurrents of the subconscious mind. We are so excited to introduce you to Shalynn and hope you are as delighted to encounter the magic that she brings to the conversation as we were.
When I was 21, I was diagnosed with a blood cancer. And I was told, you have to have a bone marrow transplant. That's the only thing that can occur. You have 6 to 12 months to live if you don't do that. And at that moment, of course, at 21, I was just sort of like, okay, free, living life, going to do all the things that I really want to do. And I had this very profound realization that this was necessary. This was part of the plan, and that I was going to be okay. And I had zero doubt about it. It was like I knew to my very core that I was going to be okay. And in the moment of that okayness, when I thought that, because my brain says that means I'm going to survive. But I heard, no, that means you're going to be okay no matter what happens. Whether you live or you die, you are going to be okay.
Shalynn Flavell, welcome to the WakeUp Protocol.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Hello, Shalynn. So excited to have you here. Before we get started, I'm curious, what's lighting you up right now in the world, in your life, or in your heart?
Well, always I have to say the work that I do with my clients lights me up. I really love it. I'm thrilled and very blessed to love what I do, but hopefully more travels this year. That also lights me up.
Having good work with your clients is always an amazing thing, being able to align what you're doing with your work. And traveling is amazing to expand your horizons. So I'm very excited for you and everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive into because as I was preparing for this, I was kind of reading through your website and you're a hypnotherapist. That was kind of the beginning.
Correct.
So I'm super curious. What does that entail? What do you do?
Wow, gosh, that's a really good question. So I found hypnotherapy as a way to really help people get out of their heads. And transformation, when you're not in your conscious thinking brain and trying to judge and be critical about everything that you're thinking, saying, or feeling, is really helpful. It helps people kind of drop into a heart space where they can be much more open. And so for people, I've found it really helpful for me in the past. And I found it a really lovely way, an easy, simple way to actually transform, because we want to make transformation hard. We always think it's hard to change. And this has been a way that sort of simplifies it. And so because it was so helpful for me, I really saw it as a way to help others move through things without the challenge of change. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm curious as just something that's really alive for me right now is dropping down, exactly what you said, dropping down from the head.
Yeah.
And I noticed I don't know if they're necessarily somatic blocks or what it is, but it's interesting. There's something that I love that you said is we all have a common need. And that is to secure ourselves in the world.
Correct.
So much of being in the head is that survival mind. It's I have to do this and I'm told that I need to do this and all the different labels that are imposed on us through socialization. I'm just curious what you found, what's lighting up your work with clients, what you found when they come alive and they're actually able to sink more into their heart. What transformations do they experience?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the transformation really comes from the fact that when they are so in their head, they know that there's something else that they want, but it's from this space that's really logical. And so they don't recognize that, in fact, they think they want, for example, happiness, but they really don't know how to express what that actually would be. And if they don't actually know what that is, there's no way that the subconscious mind, which is running 95% of what we do, can actually achieve it. So helping them actually understand what it is they really want and be able to describe it in sort of the ingredients of their secret sauce of what that is for them, they suddenly become aware of the fact that they haven't actually known. So how are they supposed to achieve something they don't actually know? But once they start to create it, they immediately start feeling better. So it's sort of helping people identify what their secret sauce is and learn to create it on a daily basis. So that challenge of wanting to be happier or wanting to be more successful or feel more confident or have whatever experience it is that they want suddenly makes sense to them. And it makes sense to the subconscious because we have the ability to create it. But if the subconscious doesn't know what those ingredients are, it simply cannot make it. And then we get stuck in this cycle of being in our head, thinking about what we really want and what we should be doing to achieve it. But it feels so very hard, so we're stuck. So this feels like a really nice way to help people immediately get lit up with this recognition of, wait, I'm the creator of this. This is coming from me. It's not coming from something outside of me.
What an incredible tool to help short track that and really the essence of it. I've experienced it once, hypnotherapy, and it really was profound, the shifts that happened. And I'm really curious to do it again at some point in the future.
Yeah. It can be, and it can be, as I said, simple because you feel very comfortable, and it doesn't necessarily make sense logically how some of those shifts happen, but that doesn't matter, right? As long as you're feeling it and the belief is there in the moment that you're having that shift, then change occurs.
Yes, that's so beautiful. I think I've only ever done one session through depth hypnosis, and it was this incredible experience. Just even the visualizations, at least in my experience, walking up a staircase and then entering into this world that was kind of knocking at the door of my own subconscious. And then when that door opened, it was this incredible, healing, heart-opening experience that I've never forgotten.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. Very enjoyable.
When you're doing this work with your clients, do you tap into their intuition?
I would say yes. It's been interesting. It's been quite a journey because I find myself when I'm taking them into a hypnotic state, I'm also in hypnosis. You know, in order for me to kind of access that and be completely in sync with them, it's very intuitive. I mean, I don't use any scripts. So there's not a plan for how it goes. We have a conversation ahead of time and I know what it is they want to work on. And I get these key ideas. And one of the things that I'm really listening for when I talk to my clients is, what are they not saying? Right? So what's being said and what are they not saying? So it helps me find where the gaps are. And then using their language, I'm able to speak to what's missing to highlight some of those things that they're trying to achieve that they can't identify. And that does take me being intuitive. And then I often have my clients say, like, how did you know that? Like, how did you say that when I was thinking that? And I know that it's not me consciously doing that. That's very much just being completely in sync with the client and being completely in the moment with them. So, yeah.
Quite a bit of intuition on both sides from you and from your client. So
Correct.
If you were to rate yourself, how intuitive would you rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10?
Oh, my gosh. Wow, that's a really good question. I would say that when I'm with my clients, it's very high. Because there's something that happens when they're in front of me. And I wouldn't say that I'm walking around the world like that, because it's definitely something that occurs when they're in front of me and we've created this space together and there's an agreement. Like they've said yes and they're there because they want change. And then it's almost like I'm given permission and then I have access. And as long as they're really open and honest with me about what's going on, then I would say 8, 9, 10, maybe. I've definitely had some profound moments where I've said things to clients that feel very strange coming out of my mouth. Like I actually stop myself and I get in my head and I think, why am I saying that? What is this about? I would never use this terminology. And then afterwards, the client tells me the impact of that and why that word was so important to them. And I've had experiences where somebody said, my father used to say that to me all the time and he passed away recently, you know? And those are those moments where I think, well, I just have to trust what's coming. So I just get out of my own way and do my best to be, you know, in sync, and whatever comes. And I just have to accept that it's coming to me and I'm saying it, then it's the right thing to say. So
Yeah, it sounds like such an adventure. It's like
it
every
is
single
totally.
client session is totally like you are literally on the edge of your thinking. Literally.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
You're leaping off.
I love it. I've often had people say to me, well, you don't have a specialty. Like, why do you not specialize? Isn't niching just a better way to market yourself? And possibly. But to me, it doesn't really matter what the issue is. It's how are they thinking and feeling about the issue. So I'm just interested in that piece. So for me, if I niche, then I'm limiting what could possibly walk through my door, and that I can pretty much help anybody as long as I can be honestly connected with them.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And, as a coach, people always tell you to niche, and then it's like, I can create these transformations in so many ways. And especially with something as powerful as hypnotherapy, you really truly have the ability to help anyone. Just so I can understand it a little bit better, what types of transformations do you create in people's lives?
Well, goodness, it goes from things like, the obvious hypnosis things like stopping smoking and stopping behaviors and patterns of habit that they don't enjoy. But I've helped people with bladder control issues. I've helped people with grief and loss. I've helped a lot of people that are going through cancer treatment and need a way to manage that. If you name it, I've probably worked with it. So the transformations can be just behavioral things. But I tend to find that even if it's something, for example, stopping biting your nails or picking your skin, that it's not just that. That's just the symptom of something else, right? Of what's really going on deeper. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking just to solve that one thing. And though they come in to solve that one thing, the work is always deeper. So the transformation is usually on a level that, is profound for them personally, not just the ending of a behavior. That's the way that I really like to work. I have certainly worked with clients just to stop particular behaviors because they're not necessarily open to going deeper. But usually people can identify that there's something else going on. There's some deeper shift that they're ready for, they want, or they need.
Yeah, that's what's coming up for me now is, especially when you're in that session, you mentioned like people have to be open to it to create that agreement. Correct. Is it necessarily like a capacity in terms of someone in part of their personality, or is it sincerity?
I would say there's an openness. They're not resisting ideas or perspectives. What will come to me is not logical, right? It doesn't make sense when I tell them or I start to express it to them unless they're willing to go, oh, wow, like I've never thought of it this way. And then they're open to sort of this make-believe and imagination, because everything we're thinking is imaginary, right? We're imagining as we think.
Yeah.
So very often, what we think is the way to fix something is really not the way at all, which is why they probably stay stuck and haven't shifted it. And so them being really open to imagining and the possibility of something occurring, and then being able to ask them questions that, does it have a color? Does it have a smell? Does it have a sound? And they're thinking, what? But that is what sort of unlocks the subconscious so that you can start to manipulate this problem in a way that actually shifts it, because it's not this problem that's just stuck in the conscious thinking brain.
Do you ever have challenges with your own openness? Like, for example, some intuition is coming through and you're like, I don't know if I should say that. Or something like that.
Yes. And what's interesting is that it happens quite often in session, is that I'll have this sort of ping and I'll go to say it and suddenly it's gone. And then I hear this, not right now, like that's not for this moment. It's sort of this like, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that right now. Okay, that's just for me to know. And I will sometimes say that out loud to my clients and they look at me. I'm usually saying, can I share what I'm hearing? Which I never used to do. But I've just become very comfortable with, this is just how it is. And I would never have said that I'm getting this, but it is very much, can I tell you what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing or what I'm sensing? Because it usually just drops in a way that I know is not from me, or I'm not creating it. I haven't thought about it or tried to solve it. It just comes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's moments where I'm just not supposed to say it. But, that doesn't mean it's easy for me to use my own intuition on myself. It's very easy for me to help others, but when it comes to myself, sometimes not nearly so easy, because I'm jumping between conscious thinking brain and intuition, which I think we all do.
That's why I'm fascinated by that. You're facilitating that bridge in that agreement between two worlds coming together and forming this. I think it was Jung that said something like, when two souls meet, there's a chemical reaction. And so there's something in that container that you create together that's magic.
Yep. And I find that a lot of the work for me actually comes when we're having the conversation before the hypnosis even happens. That's where most of that reframing and the ideas and the intuition sort of comes to me, which helps me really set sort of the stage energetically and emotionally for the journey in the hypnosis. And so the hypnosis feels like I'm just sort of stamping all of those changes in, if that makes sense. Somebody actually said that to me, that it's rather like you're kind of stamping or setting all those shifts in somewhere inside that then they start amplifying and multiplying, which I think is an interesting way to think about it.
It sounds like you're just becoming an empty vessel to channel this information through and create these deep transformations and making yourself available in this third dimensional reality so all this other stuff can change.
Yeah, because I can tell you when they leave, I don't remember what was said unless I take really good notes. Because I'm just really present with them. And I've found that at some point, we'll probably get to this, there was a shift in the way that I work. And now I'm just present. So I don't always remember.
And I am so curious to get there. But before we get there, I have one more question.
Sure.
How would you define spiritual awakening or awakening to a expanded consciousness or whatever you call that?
Wow. I mean, I think waking up is good, the idea of waking up. But what you're waking up to, I think, could be different for each transformation for each person. Because I know that I've had a couple of awakenings and they were both different. It was almost like one took me to one level and then another one took me to another level. The way that I would express it, I think, because of my own experience, is that it really helped me recognize identity and how we create that and the meanings that we make around ourselves and ourselves in the world, and then how we see others and society and how we're supposed to function. And that wake up is sort of taking you to this space that isn't so in the conscious brain, right? That there's more there.
Yeah, that's what's coming up. Again, it's another Jung quote, but it's until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. But it sounds like what you're talking about is like really a reclamation in a sense. It's like waking up to a greater responsibility.
Yes. And yet what's interesting for me and the way that maybe I feel it too is that you feel less responsible when you're awakened, because there's responsibility, but not the kind of responsibility that we think about, which is like all the need tos, have tos, and shoulds, and the things that have to occur in my life. And, you know, I've got to strive for all this stuff.
Yes.
And I need the success and the accomplishments and all these things that are part of identity.
Yes.
And then that sort of goes away, at least for me, it sort of goes away. That's the way I think about it. And you're much more free.
Yes.
So there's some responsibility, but it doesn't feel the same as the kind of responsibility that we think about consciously when we're living our lives that way.
Yes, literally like response dash ability. It's
correct.
Like a capacity to open that gap and make conscious choices.
Exactly. We respond versus react.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've never actually thought about how would I express awakening. Yeah. It's interesting.
Is there anything else you would want to add to that?
I would say a spiritual element to it, where there's something bigger, greater. I'm not a religious person, so I don't put it into the category of religion at all, but there definitely is something that is magic, and that magic sort of becomes apparent. And we're part of that. And that is freeing and beautiful, and other people are going to express it differently. But I think the essence is the same.
Yeah. I'm so amazed at the different explanations about this experience because so many people go through it and see it through different lenses. But ultimately, there's that element of magic, that big transformation that's happening.
Yeah.
A lot of people also talk about that there is a truth that is bigger than the truth they thought was reality before.
Yeah.
You've had a few of those experiences and one that specifically stands out. So I would love for you to share a little bit about what happened to you when you had that awakening. And I don't even know if that's what you want to call it.
So there's two. The most recent one, well, it's impactful because it was more recent. The first one was also very impactful, but quite different. But this one, there's nothing was really going on in my life that seemed like, you know, I was in questioning mode or seeking mode or needing something. I can look back now and say, yes, indeed, there was something that was needed, but not at the time. And I wouldn't have said so. But I woke up in the middle of the night one night. It was like about 2:10 in the morning. And I remember just sitting straight up. I was sort of shocked awake. And I sat straight up and I just had this feeling that was so intense that everything that I had ever believed or known to be true about myself and my life just shattered. Like it all just completely came apart. And it was so abrupt. And it was the instant of awakening that I felt this intense feeling. And I just became hysterical immediately. And my poor husband wakes up like, what is happening? And I didn't even know how to express it to him. I just was feeling these waves of recognition that all of the meanings that I had made of my life and myself and my family and the way that I grew up and all this that I had created as my identity was meaningless. And I had created it all in order to be in this false reality, I suppose, what I thought was reality, but I needed that structure in order to function, but that it was all meaningless and I had made it up. Or we had made it up together as a family. And then greater, we had all made it up as society, right? And that none of it was really necessary and that I had choice. And it took me a little bit to recognize that I had choice. But in the moment, I just felt totally hopeless. It felt like despair. I thought to myself, and I kept saying to my husband, well, there's no reason to get up tomorrow. I don't know how to function. I think this is it. And he's like, what are you talking about? You think this is it? And I actually had this moment. I thought, well, that's it. Life is over. I probably am about to die, right? I've gotten the reality of here's what it really is. And how am I supposed to get up and function knowing all of that? What am I supposed to do? And so I think I was crying for a good two and a half hours before I finally fell back to sleep. And that whole time I couldn't see beyond that moment. I couldn't even begin to imagine what could come next because I didn't know how to create it in that moment because I realized I was the creator of it. I thought, well, now that I know that I'm the creator of it, none of it meant anything. How am I supposed to create moving forward? But of course, I woke up in the morning and lay there for a bit, surprised that I had woken up and realized, well, I guess I could lie here, but I'm going to have to get up and put my clothes on because I have clients today and I'm supposed to go back to work. And I thought, well, am I going to go back to work? I mean, should I do this? Does this mean anything? And so then this progression of just me recognizing that because I have choice, that I get to set the meaning, that I get to decide what it all means. And so there was this very real sort of feeling of being intentional about the choices that I had about what things meant, or maybe I just decided they have no meaning at all, and that's okay. And I could just make a choice from moment to moment to be present with what is. And I didn't have to attach anything to it, which meant that I didn't have to attach any sort of identity even to myself. I could just be whoever I chose to be from moment to moment, and that's completely fine. So I don't have to be a procrastinator or a driven, successful, whatever. I don't have to be any of the things that I had thought myself to be unless I chose it. So it became this very both freeing and at the time also intensely heavy experience.
It makes me very emotional hearing this because it almost feels like you've experienced death within life. You almost didn't see why you should continue going on.
Yeah.
And then from that place, you had that realization that you are the creator of your own reality. And because you've created this previous reality, you now get to create a new reality.
Yeah. Yes. And it did feel like death. And that's probably why I was so hysterical about it, because, I didn't feel ready to go, There's so many things I wanted to do.
Has there been anything leading up to that moment that you feel caused that, or was it just completely out of the blue?
It was completely out of the blue. I mean, I have tried to figure it out. The only thing that I would say now in looking back is that, I was already working with clients. This was probably about 10 years ago. So I've been working with clients for 15 years-ish, full time. And I think it was really that it was sort of a wake up to the way that I was working with my clients as well. Because it completely shifted, obviously, the way that I view meanings made and stories that people have about themselves and their world and their life and the things that have happened to them and problems and challenges. And I recognize that it all is meaningless. but I can look at and understand that they've created meaning, and what is that meaning? So how do we change the meaning? Because we're meaning-making machines. We've probably all heard that terminology, right? And so in order to kind of keep functioning in the world, we create meanings in order to kind of have a solid foundation of how we function and how we do things. So in knowing that, it really has helped me. The work is to help people create better meanings for themselves, meanings that feel really comfortably good, that allow them to feel free and joyful and happy and all the things that we want. Because I know people are going to make meanings. That's what we do. And so this shift for me really helped me show up that way with my clients. And so that's the issue doesn't matter really. It's like, what is the meaning that they're making of this issue? And how to help them have the same sort of understanding without going through sort of death, right? That ego death and that traumatic experience that I had. How do I help gently guide them to have an understanding without having to go through something like that?
Yeah, wow. That's so incredible. I mean, I've heard stories of other people who have had liberation moments or spiritual teachers describe their awakening as the greatest catastrophe of their lives. They talk about it as being a tremendous failure. I know one spiritual teacher, Shanteau, described he was this spiritual athlete. He would meditate for like 10 hours a day, and he was going to be the best meditator ever. He had previously been a professional athlete, a bike rider, something like that. And so it like transferred all of that energy into meditating, and I'm going to become enlightened, and it's going to be this. And the way he described his liberation was just, it all collapsed. All of that identity was gone. That's so fascinating to me.
What's coming to mind as you say that is doing. And that's one of the things that shifted for me, is that I really, for myself personally, noticed that all this sort of doing and the sort of grasping for things and the trying to wrangle things into being went away. And it was very relieving. And I'm much more able to just be. So I'm more focused on who I'm being, who and how I'm being, less on what I'm doing. Which, I have to find a balance because we need to do things in the world, right, in order to achieve things. But my focus is always on who and how am I being when I'm doing? Because ultimately, it's about the experience that we have and feeling good about the experience that we have in life. I know that from my first wake up that I had, that was really more about the fact that who and how we're being in the world is the thing that we, on our deathbed or when we're at the end, that's the only thing that we have left, right? The doings and the things we've achieved, we don't get to take any of that with us. That's not important at the end. What's important is, have we loved being who we are? Have we enjoyed the experience? Have we been a good human? Have we made connection that feels really good? So it solidified that and allowing the doing energy to really fall away.
Yeah, what's fascinating was you talked about the most everyone or so many people have this almost like common need or common story they tell, is that they need to secure their world in a way. Yeah. Would you say that that's like the singular kind of story that you find with your clients, that some variation of that?
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of us would say that that's purpose. Finding the purpose so that we can be solid in who and how we're being in the world, right? What we're doing, what we're achieving, what gets us up every day, what keeps us kind of moving forward. And a lot of people won't necessarily call it out, but at some point they realize, wow, I just feel like I need to be purposeful. And so then it comes back to, well, what's my purpose? If I recognize that getting the things or achieving that job or having, that baby or losing 20 pounds isn't the thing that makes me feel happy and content with myself and my life, then what is that? Maybe it's purpose.
Yeah, what's really fascinating too is you described you're not necessarily a religious person either. And typically, like, people describe awakening as having a kind of spiritual meaning derived from it. It's like, well, this must mean then that there's this other world. What's interesting about the way you've described it in particular is that it's almost like an evolutionary progression in human life. It's like a human birthright.
Yeah.
Have this experience.
That's sort of the way that I feel about it. And I think that when I look at people, and I certainly, because of the work that I do, I can see people at different stages of that, right? Where are they in this progression? And, some people may say, oh, that's somebody who's an old soul versus a young soul, right? And if we want to talk about reincarnation, that they've been here a certain amount of time, and they've learned certain lessons, and they're at this certain place. And I could call it that. But I would definitely say that you can see where someone's ready for that next shift. They're ready for that awakening. And it can come in really big ways or it can come in really small ways. But each one of those is a bit of an awakening because a small thing can feel very, very profound, right? And one of the things that was kind of mind-blowing to me was that I had had that experience that was so profound for me, but nobody would have known it. Nobody else could see that. People were interacting with me the same way. I had the same things that I had to do. But for me, everything was different.
Right.
You were a completely different person from one day to the other, just overnight. And yet nobody had the realization that's what actually happened.
That's correct.
To you.
Yep.
How did you do life after that? Do you start integrating that?
It was challenging, but I also could fall back on, but there's this familiarity in the way that I did things. So if I was uncertain, I know that at least in that moment, I could do the thing that was familiar. It didn't need to be traumatic for anybody else, just because it felt traumatic for me.
A lot of people are talking about their relationships changing after they have these spiritual experiences. Did you experience that too?
Yeah, I definitely experienced it. I certainly experienced it with my parents and my brother, because so much of the meaning and the identity that shattered was young identity, like how I'd created who I was from the moment I could remember as a kid. So I had some very solidified meanings created with my family, and that changed. I was really much more able to see them just as lovely beings, right? Lovely humans that are exactly the same as me, that have created all these meanings, that had all these experiences, that created an identity that they felt sort of stuck in. And so I was really able to see some of the patterns, and I felt really empathetic and full of love for their experiences and what was created in them and who they believed themselves to be because of it. So those relationships changed. I think there was just a deepening of love, really, and the stripping away of anything that, not that I'd always had a good relationship with my family, but when it all shattered and I looked at the meanings, I could see where there were things that happened that caused things that needn't be, right? And those just fell away. So there was nothing to hold against anybody in a negative manner at all. And so also what that's done is it allows me to be very non-judgmental with people, I think, because I just sort of see the truth of who they really are underneath all the things that have created this identity, you know?
What a beautiful shift. In any relationship, there's two people or more.
Yeah.
And the only thing we have truly control over is how we show up in the relationship. So by you shifting that and seeing people through the lens of love, I'm sure that just really has a positive effect on everybody who surrounds you.
I would hope. It was almost hard to share it with people because I also recognized that they maybe didn't see that change in me and they were still holding me to the previous identity.
I can see that. That can be really difficult for people to assume you're still the same person and then having you respond. And my guess is that people would eventually learn that you are no longer responding in a certain way, and that might actually reprogram their own neural pathways in a way that they learn that you're now a different person.
Yeah. But though the profound shift happened for me over time, it's very easy to fall back to those old pathways, right? Those pathways were open for a massive chunk of my life. And when life gets challenging, those old defaults pop up, right? And they go, hey, how about me? Remember me? And you find yourself using old tools. And then fortunately, I'm much more able to catch myself and say, oh, look, it's not interesting. That popped back up. Like recognizing it's there to help me. But thank you, no thank you,
Yeah, so you talked about that identity shift and specifically about that moment you had in the middle of the night. But then you also mentioned that you've had more experiences when you were younger. Is there another one that stands out that you want to share?
Yes, yeah. So when I was 21, I was diagnosed with a blood cancer. And when I look back now, I recognize that I was just not seeing all the symptoms that were happening so very slowly. But I got diagnosed. I ended up in the emergency room and it was, here's this problem. And it was all happened within a few hours. And I was told, you have to have a bone marrow transplant. That's the only thing that can occur. You have 6 to 12 months to live if you don't do that. And that moment, of course, at 21, I was just sort of like, okay, free, living life, going to do all the things that I really want to do. And I had this, it happened over a few days, but I had this very profound realization that this was necessary. This was part of the plan, and that I was going to be okay. And I had zero doubt about it. It was like I knew to my very core that I was going to be okay. And in the moment of that okayness, when I thought that, because my brain says that means I'm going to survive. But I heard, no, that means you're going to be okay no matter what happens. Whether you live or you die, you are going to be okay. And so then I started to really have this sort of awakening to the me inside the body. And that my body needed help, but I was fine. And that happened within about 5 days. I had this real awakening to that. And I was absolutely fine with what was happening because I knew that I was going to be okay no matter what. And I didn't know what the journey was going to be, but I already was so clear on, I'm here to experience this, so I'm going to do it the best way that I can. And what does that look like? And the doctors actually thought that I was in denial about the whole thing. And I kept holding these family meetings because they thought that I wasn't understanding what was going on. And yeah, I really understood. And at the time, I actually heard that in order to help other people, which you're going to do, you need to help yourself first. So that was a piece of this bigger experience that at some point I had no idea what helping people would look like, because that was not something in my life at 21. But that was very clear to me. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to do this the very best way that I can. And so every day I was like, what does that look like today? And I wasn't being thrown into Western medicine, which I grew up in Hong Kong, so I was very open to all sorts of things. But that seemed very limiting. So I said, okay, if I'm going to really help my body the best way that I can, I'm going to look for all the ways to do that. But I also knew that I needed to be in a very clear state of mind. So that's how I found hypnotherapy, because I found a family friend who was a hypnotherapist. And she helped me so much with taking what I had just heard and understood and felt and turning it into a way of being in that experience that I would categorically say changed the journey entirely. And even I had doctors that were like, I don't know how this is occurring, but whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. And I do think a lot of that was being in true belief. I know that that's very important. There was a zero doubt, because you could say, oh, I'm going to be fine, but and there was never a but So I felt very, very good about that piece. I don't know how that occurred, except that it was like such a clear awakening for me in that moment. And the attachment to the outcome was not really important.
That's what I'm hearing in all of this is your higher self was guiding you, and it actually gave you the realization that everything is going to be okay no matter what happens. And by doing that, you can completely release attachment to outcome. And that's usually the way things manifest in the world, right? It's like we want, and we clench onto it, and it doesn't happen, because the moment we let go and we know it's going to be okay either way, then they start clicking in.
Correct. That wanting and that need is really coming from a place of lack and fear, right? So I was very clear about, if I am doing that and I'm gripping to this, like, I'm going to be a warrior, I'm going to fight. The other thing I knew was that meant I'm fighting myself, because this was occurring inside of me. Mm-hmm. So I wanted zero fight. This needed to be peaceful. This needed to be loving. And I'm knowing that I was going to be receiving bone marrow from somebody else, right? Which is ultimately the immune system. The way that works is that immune system fights your body if there's going to be any rejection. So I was like, no, I'm going to make the most peaceful, the most welcoming, the most loving of homes. And when it arrives, we're in joy about this. Welcome. We're befriending you. My whole way of being was like, how do I create peace? How do I create love? How do I just basically everything is absolutely okay with zero attachment? I didn't need to be in control like that.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know why Jung keeps coming up, but he described the awareness of a personality number 2. That he kind of awakened through a mist, that he realized that there was a kind of deeper, it was kind of his introduction to the unconscious. And what you're describing sounds like the waking up to this kind of deeper part of you that also knew somehow that you signed on for this.
Right. Yeah.
It's like just deep awareness.
It's really interesting that you say that, because many years later, in my 30s, I was a scuba dive instructor in Hawaii, and I was working on the boat this day. And this woman comes up behind me and she taps me on the shoulder, and I chat with her and she says, "I'm sorry, I just have to say something to you and I hope you don't mind." She goes, "I recognize that you had a really challenging journey with your blood." I'm like, okay, this is really out of left field. And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "I want to tell you why you're here." I said, "Okay." She goes, "The reason you survived is because you accepted immediately." And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I did. I was in full acceptance. And so the fact that you said that is the reminder that is indeed what happened. And that's a massive piece of the work that I do with my clients now, is because I'm recognizing healing happens when acceptance occurs. And real acceptance, which is where I was saying there wasn't a but or an and that came after "I'm going to be fine, I'm okay no matter what." That's the real acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the image that's coming up for me right now is almost like it kind of knocked you off your center of gravity in that personality number one.
Yeah.
It's number two. And then there's the realization that there's this deeper awareness. And then over time, living more in that space of acceptance. And almost like the way you're describing is like, there's a kind of amusement in that freedom. There's a kind of adventure to every single day, every single thing.
That's right.
Like, what can I create?
Yeah. And it freed me from looking at things as good and bad. Right? Because I knew that what was going to occur for me going through all the chemo and all the bone marrow transplant, the whole thing, like that's not quote unquote good, right? It doesn't fit into the box of good, wonderful life experiences. But then to me, I had this very clear, like, life is all the things. And if I really love life, then I got to love all the things. So I'm going to love this cancer that's happening to me.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm going to love that too. I'm going to love this experience. I'm going to love the journey. I'm going to love what occurs and what doesn't occur. And as long as I'm in that place, there's no problem. My internal state is absolutely fine. And that's the message that's then being sent to my physical body.
Yes.
Everything that was going on was there to help. And as long as I'm in sort of the loving space of yes, then I believe that, right? And that's belief is what is being sent as a message to every cell of my being and every level of consciousness.
Yeah, again, like the phrase, I think Nietzsche said, amor fati, the love of fate. It's like just totally deeply, not only accept, but commit to this life.
Yeah, because these awful things that happen to us are part of this life we love.
Yeah.
You know, we want it all to be rainbows and unicorns and everything is wonderful, but that's not the truth. It is all the things. And so the removing of the labeling and the meanings, right? And being able to just sort of go, oh, this is part of it. Wow, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for me getting to experience this, because that means I'm alive.
Yes.
What a gift.
At that age, like afterwards, I just felt like, I still feel like it was such an amazing gift. And I'm so thankful that it happened to me young, because a lot of people don't have that until way down the road, you know. I'm sure that there's going to be some other awakening at some point. I don't know what that'll look like, you know, the next level.
Yeah, the older we get, the more experiences happen. Just from the people we've talked to so far, when we talk to people in their 70s, 80s, they're like, oh, honey, yeah, that was when I was in my 20s. I would love to go even further back and just step back on that timeline into your childhood. Have you ever had experiences where you maybe felt awake?
Yeah, well, when I was maybe 5 or 6, I remember there was a period of time where I would wake up every night and there would be 3 figures at the end of my bed. I used to have this picture behind my bed of this drawing of 3 girls, and it was a very fun, abstract drawing. But because of those 3 beings in my mind at the time, it was like, oh, it's my 3 friends. But I used to really feel like we would have this communication. And they would be there and they would show up and then they would hang out for a bit and then they would leave. And it was either that they were watching over me, that we were kind of just having a fun, and I couldn't even tell you the things that we talked about or the things that I felt, but that we were having this fun communication. But it was also like, we see you, was how it felt. Now, that also coincided with a period of time where I also when that wasn't occurring, I was having these reoccurring terrible nightmares that are really hard for me to explain. The only way that I could explain it was it felt like something really huge and dark was rolling towards me and enveloping me. And I was so very, very, very small. And it wasn't anything more than a feeling. And it wasn't like a dream where you're experiencing things. It was this intense, very huge and very powerful rolling towards me and about to engulf me. And so I would wake up pretty hysterical, and my parents would have to come and sit with me and try and get me back to sleep. And I think I was probably 4 or 5. And maybe that's why then I started to have these 3 beings that would show up at the end of my bed, like, you're okay, we're here. But that still feels very profound for me. And I was so very young, but I remember it. And the only other time since childhood that I experienced that was one other night where I woke up probably 5 or so years ago. And I had that same feeling, only moving into me and pulling me out of myself. And it was that same very big, dark, and then it became this spiral and it moved into me and it was trying to pull me out of myself. And I remember waking up terrified again, like, no, you can't take me for myself, which also felt like, oh my gosh, was I about to die? So, but those felt very similar, that childhood experience and then that experience that I had, they had a very similar quality to it.
Yeah. I'm curious if there was any similarity, because when you woke up in the night, it just like shocked and felt that kind of ensuing hopelessness and just like everything had collapsed. Was there similarities in that experience with this thing, or is this something totally different?
The similarity was the shocking feeling, and it felt very much about spirit, like who I really am, my true self. It felt very much like, I don't want to say an attack on, but that it was about that.
Yeah.
You know, not about the sort of physical life so much as the essence of me.
Yeah.
And maybe I was sort of holding off because I'd had that experience of the shattering. That felt similar. And I was like, oh no, like, no, not ready for that right now.
Yeah. You also have that intuitive wisdom though, because when you were younger, you were an emphatic yes to this experience. It's like, yes. Even though everyone else socially is telling you, you need to be afraid, you need to fight, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And you at the same time, you knew intuitively it was a yes. I'm going to go through this. I signed on for this and I'm going to be okay no matter what.
Yeah.
This is different because this is saying, no,
right.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You're not taking this.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's like clear.
Well, and it is interesting because that did feel dark. That's the only other thing. It felt scary and dark, not welcoming.
Yes.
So I don't know what that was about, but that was a definite no. Like that's,
Yeah. That's fascinating.
You've mentioned tools, and I'm curious, what are your main go-to tools to navigate this new awareness, this new reality?
Yeah, I'd start with, me asking myself, and you've heard me say it, like, who and how do I want to be? Because that can change, right? It can change from situation to situation. And when I don't think of myself as this is who I am, and I haven't put myself in a box, then I can show up however feels appropriate and right, almost intuitively, kind of figuring out how to be right in this situation. And does that feel aligned with how that feels loving, that feels open and in that space of recognizing that life is both good and bad, right? It's all the things. And so I have moments where, and I'm not brilliant at it all the time, let me tell you, I'm still human, but being able to catch myself in a moment of going into a default pattern or default setting and be able to go, oh, there that is, hang on. Let me just take a moment and get back to being present. Let me drop away from my thinking brain. Let me drop down into that part of me that knows more, or knows better, or knows differently, and ask from that space. And know that if love and care is always truly my essence, that's where I'm coming from. Is this aligned with me staying true to that?
Yeah, that sounds like such a powerful tool to just step back into awareness, into realness, differentiating what's the mind, what's the heart, and everything is okay.
It can be challenging sometimes because I get stumped on what to say. Sorry to my husband, but sometimes when we get into arguments about things, and I try to come from that space, what ends up happening is I can't really speak my words properly. So I get kind of stumped and I have to walk away and process, because I recognized that I would fall into a default, or I'd go up into my head and I'd go into this place that isn't really where I want to operate from. And so I can feel myself getting kind of thrown off, and I have to pause and drop down in, like, how do I really want to show up here? And sometimes the words just, I shouldn't say them, or they're just not right. And do I need to say something just because that's what we do? It's not always easy to use that tool, but it's the one that helps me. And it reminds me, I need to be reminded, because I'm human, that I can operate from that other space. Now, again, it's so easy when I come into my office, because this sort of container this is how I operate here, which is why I love being at work, because I really get to be in that space all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've already shared a bit about what has changed in your life with people, with relationships. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what else has changed in your life, your relationship to food and things.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's definitely changed. Mind you, that changed a long time back at the first real awakening. But I really became aware of, I want to take care of my body, and I want to take care of myself. So I want to nourish my body kindly and lovingly, because, does it come from a loving place? And is it supporting me in a way that I want to be supported? And if not, then I really choose to generally not do it, and not have it. The one thing that I have been challenged by a little bit, strangely, is staying moving in my body, like being a really good exerciser, because it's not that I detach from my physical body, because I know how important it is, but I spend so much time in this other space that I have to go, oh, right, body, yes. I got to take care of that too. And I eat well and I sleep well, and I need to move well too. So that's an ongoing work in progress for me, which is interesting. I think I'm ready to move into some next level. So bring on the next awakening of being very content. Just really finding contentment and choosing that, so that I'm not having these massive spikes of highs and lows. And I do see it as creating this baseline contentment that sort of joy rises from really easily. But when I've got that, then I find that the lows really don't occur. So I'm much more even-keeled and kind of consistent and content. And I know that people close to me, some of my best girlfriends, will say, yeah, you're like the most even keel, at ease person. And I know that's a piece that I worked on. And that came about because some of that sort of agony of needing to and having to and should went away. So I wasn't in this place of lack so much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this idea of sort of cultivating contentment has sort of been a thread in the work that I do too. Because people want joy, right? They want to experience all the high highs, but those aren't maintainable, because life does this, because it's all the things. So by creating a really lovely foundation of where your contentment, where are you content, and what does that look and feel like? And if you can establish that, then you can still have the highs and you may have the lows, but you have this place to come back to that always feels good.
I just want to breathe into that and remember that. Colin and I are saying we partially do this show for ourselves, maybe mostly for ourselves, because we get reminded, every person we talk to, we're just getting so much affirmation and learning about how to be more in these moments, and just that contentment.
That is beautiful. I love the reminder. I think that's probably part of the reason that I love to do this work too, is because, when I'm helping people have insights or they're reframing things, there's so much of that reminder that it's like, oh yes, Shalynn, remember this, And when it's coming through me to them, I get the benefit. I mean, that's another, which was what you experience, I'm sure, in this, is you're getting this energetic benefit, this feedback loop of like really good stuff. So
much good stuff. It's such a gift. A lot of people are also talking about nature and their connection to nature. What is your connection to nature?
After the first awakening, the bone marrow transplant and all that, I was like swinging all the way to, I've got to be in it. And I found scuba diving as my real immersion into nature. This sort of became an obsession for me. And then I ended up becoming a scuba instructor and working for many years doing that, because that for me was so healing. When I think of my happy place, it's underwater. It's the sound of the bubbles and the sound of the things happening in the ocean, and just being in this world where when you really are there and immersed in it that way, you are part of something. And It isn't the something of chattering and need tos and have tos and shoulds and meanings. And it's just this, you can see the world occurring in the same way that you may look at society. You can see how the ocean does that, right? Like the particular freeways that the fish may go and the cleaning stations that they go to and the interactions between creatures. But it's just another way of perceiving that, which I just love. So, yeah.
So beautiful. Scuba diving is on my bucket list. I still haven't done it. People describe it as just going almost into outer space or into a completely different world where everything is so magical.
Yeah. And when you're really relaxed in it, it's not about doing, it's really about being, and you're weightless, right? So you feel totally supported. To me, the way that I felt is like I'm in the womb of Mother Earth, being totally supported in the liquid of. So yeah, I'm able to really relax, even though there's lots of things you need to, figure out. But once I got to a level where I could really relax in it, it's truly so wonderful. So wonderful. I would highly recommend it.
I have a final question.
Sure.
If you could go back in time, what message would you give your younger self?
I would say that perhaps to not be so stubborn. Not that I think stubbornness is a bad thing, because I do think that we can use that in a very powerful and positive way. That means that you've got some real conviction about things. But I could have had possibly some experiences that I wouldn't have had I been less stubborn. I could have had more of the experiences available to me. And so I had this insight that I had been very stubborn about one particular thing. And I realized that stubbornness actually sort of shortened my childhood freedom. But I did that to myself. But that's only a realization I've had recently. I'll share it with you if you want. That's a way for me to not be held back. I'm going to go have this incredible experience. So it was like excited about the experience and the independence of that, because I was a pretty independent kid. But I was really stubborn about it. So my parents, I got them to agree, and I went and I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It was an amazing experience. I loved it. But when I look back now, and I've had did have this profound day where I recognized that one of the things that I was really longing for, even still, was the freedom, that sort of freedom that you have when you're a kid, where the responsibilities aren't really there, where you just get to be yourself fully and completely. Every day you can be yourself fully and completely. And I recognized that when I decided very stubbornly that I absolutely had to go to boarding school, that's sort of when that ended, because I had to step into all this responsibility. I had to be basically on my own. I didn't have my parents to turn to. Suddenly I had to learn to manage things and take care of things on my own, which was great. And I thought good at it and I enjoyed it. But when I look back now, I realize, that sort of shortened my childhood a little bit. That lack of responsibility childhood where you're totally free. And that made me have to start to figure out how, maybe that started when the meaning started being really made and solidified, was how do I work in this situation? How do I figure out who I'm supposed to be in this new situation? And I didn't have anybody that I know close to me there to help me. So I had to kind of figure it all out on my own. Yeah. So
since time is not linear, maybe part of that went back to your younger self, and it might change the trajectory of your current life.
Well, true. And actually, it's funny because I do think back and I think, well, that independence and that I'm going to choose to be okay, even if it's hard, was what showed up again when I got sick, was that same really stubborn independence of I've made a decision and I'm going to just go with it and do it the best way that I can, no matter what. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
What an incredible journey. And you're a hypnotherapist, a transformational coach, and also a stress management consultant. And I want to make sure I give you a chance to share how people can find you and if you have any offerings.
Yes. So my website is templehypnosis.com. And presently, you'll just see all my offerings, my services. I work with anybody, anywhere. They don't have to be in Seattle, which is where I am. And in the next few months, I'm working on it right now, putting together a group coaching program, because it's sort of bringing this concept of getting to a place of acceptance. And I have, over the years, this formula of how to help people get there. And there's just steps to the process. And so I've decided, rather than just do that one-on-one, to see about offering that as a group coaching program. So if anybody's interested, they can hit me up and I can put them on the list and let them know when that occurs. Yeah, that's coming up soon.
Wonderful. And we'll put all the links in the show notes for everybody to click on as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. What an absolute pleasure to hear your story. And I feel inspired and reinvigorated. And it's just such medicine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's really nice to be able to share these stories because I don't share them a lot. So it's nice to be reminded. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so beautiful. Learning more about your story, about these amazing tools that you've cultivated over time, and this magic of meeting.
Yeah, this magic. Yeah, let's all go enjoy the magic.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wake Up Protocol. If you like what you heard, share this episode with 3 people who need to hear this message. And if you want to go deeper, head to thewakeuprotocol.com and sign up for our email list. That's where we share behind-the-scenes insights, bonus resources, exclusive invites, and the kind of guidance we only send to our community. And if this is the last thing you hear from us, all we'd like to say is keep going, trust yourself, follow your heart. Until next time, have a safe and happy journey.